Money.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and guests. How many of you in this room, my fellow Toastmasters, would like to be CEOs of your company one day? Why don't you? Almost half of you. Well, this is a great aspiration. But in my opinion, I think American CEOs make too much money. So we've all heard in the news today, the average American CEO makes 300 times what the average person in his company makes. Friends, this was not always the case. So I'm going to go back in history to 1965, when there was a real middle class in this country. In 1965, the average CEO made 26 times what the average person in his company makes. By 1980, that had moved up to 40 to 1. By 1989, the average CEO made 72 times what the average person in his company makes, until by 1999, or right around now, the average CEO makes 300 times what the average person in his company makes. So many people think this has to do with the increasing use of stock options. If we look way back in 1950, there was a passage of a law called the Revenue Act, which gave favorable tax treatment to stock options for CEOs. So what happens is we start seeing mega grant stock options for CEOs in the tens of millions of shares, so that by 1980-82, the FedEx CEO takes home $50 million. It's a lot of money. Another way to look at American CEO pay is we can compare it to other countries. So, if we look at Japan, Japan has the same multinational companies that we do, Sony, Honda, Toyota, very successful companies. The average CEO in Japan makes 10 times what the average worker in his company makes. So put another way, the average CEO in Japan makes 1/6 what the average CEO in America makes. In Europe, it's quite the same. In Switzerland, the average CEO makes 10 times what the average person in his company makes. And in the UK and Canada, it's 25 to 1. Now, this isn't to say that all American CEOs are overpaid. Does anyone here know, name a company where they have a rule, and this is one of the top performing companies in the stock market, however way you want to look at it. They have a rule that no executive should make more than 20 times what the average person in his company makes. Whole Foods. We all know Whole Foods, right? So actually, this ruling has not hurt the company's prospects at all. See, executives make 20 times as much. That's the limit. And it's been their stock has gone from $6 or $7 a share to $50 a share. I'm going to give you a few examples of American CEOs that were paid too much money. And it's not to vilify these people, but just to make a point. So we all know Yahoo. Yahoo was it was the Facebook of its day 10 years ago. But the fact is, the past 2, 3, 4 years, Yahoo has been a poor performer, stock, price performance. Yet the CEO, Carol Bartz, who was recently fired last year, she had been CEO for 2 or 3 years before that, she was taking home about $40 million a year. Many people think just because the board members, they're all kind of in a clubby type atmosphere and they gave her this huge contract, nothing to do with her ability to increase the performance of the company. Another example is the company Motorola in Chicago. We all know Motorola had a hit phone, the Razr, 7, 8 years ago, but the fact is Motorola, what have they done in the past 2, 3 years? Pretty much nothing. Yet their CEO recently took a pay package of about $50 to $60 million because Google bought Yahoo last year, mostly for their patents, which they've discovered years ago. Had nothing to do with the current CEO. Now, another reason people think that giving stock options to executives is not a good way to do things is because stock options encourage more risk-taking. So if we see in the 2008 financial crisis, when many of our banks pretty much had to be bailed out by the government, what some people think happened is the CEOs and the executives were taking a lot of risks in making large bets on financial derivatives, giving out a lot of subprime mortgages, and then a lot of these CEOs really didn't even understand what they were doing. A lot of these financial derivatives, pretty much they hire mathematicians to figure these things out. Most of the CEOs didn't even really understand, but they wanted to play the game, increase their stock price so they would get a bigger paycheck. Now, one other reason why you see myself giving this speech, and that you see people on Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, they're going to burn down, cities. What's going on? One of the reasons is because right now we have 8-9% unemployment, and people aren't really doing that well. Where 10 years ago, when we had the same high CEO pay, the economy was much better, and when a rising boat lifts all boats, everyone does well, everybody's happy. So this is what you see going on today, and in my opinion, I'm not a member of the corporate scene like some of you are, but in my opinion, really, no matter how you slice and dice it, any way you look at it, either the history of CEO pay in this country or by comparing other developed companies, CEOs are okay. So my wish person, I know there's one of you in this room, they're going to break out and become a CEO one day and get that huge pay package. I just want you to remember us little folks and hopefully leave a few crumbs